Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daffa Praditya Devano Ramadan, or you can call me Daffa for short. I am an English literature student from BSI University and currently attending sixth semester. And now I'm about to explain or elaborate more about the topic that will be discussed today, which is under the subject of applied linguistics, and this is also part of the final project. And this title is basically elaborating all of or like discover all of the things that we would like to discuss for today, which is integrating linguistics into society. So without any further ado, let's get started. So basically, there are two study cases that I have to solve. So one of the cases is from Thompson's story. So I would like to read out loud to you about his story. So the story is that he is a linguist studying. He is a linguist studying the use of language in news reporting, and he is particularly interested in how language can convey bias, shape public opinion, and influence the perceptions of news events. Therefore, he seeks an appropriate linguistic features that suits to contribute to bias reporting. So he did, and hereby the answers from what Thompson's story has. So from my perspective, what he needs to do is first is that word choice and connotation. So basically it's a specific terms so basically it's a specific terms can greatly influence readers' perceptions, and therefore connotations are the emotional or cultural association attached to words beyond their literal meaning. And then the second one is loaded language. So words that carry strong positive or negative connotations can skew readers' perceptions. For example, referring to a protest as a riot versus demonstrations can lead to a very different interpretation. So riot means more rebel, more, not really good in a way of we are saying that things. But demonstrations means more like peaceful and also more democratic and more appropriate in delivering the message or conveying the message that we want to. So these two words have a totally different interpretations if people seeing these two words. And and thirdly is euphemism and dysphemism. So euphemism soften reality of situation. For example, instead of using civilian casualties, they will use collateral damage. While this euphemism make it sound worse. For example, instead of freedom fighter, they referred more to terrorists. For example, this is there is a real case that suits with the situations that we are currently learning on. So the Taliban in Afghanistan often um, described as a terrorist who wants to make rebel to the government, the official government of Afghanistan. But in reality, it turns out that they are a freedom fighter. It doesn't mean I do support what Taliban did, but it's basically the U.S. government have really instilling their influence for 20 years. So Afghanistan government before the Taliban now is basically just the under shadow of what of the U.S. government itself. So basically, the people didn't really have their independence under the before the officials of current Taliban, but it's basically the U.S. just wants to disproportionate them into something that not really in a good way of what people think of Taliban itself. But Taliban, Afghanistan has quite a more peaceful and a freedom, and there's less riot than ever because of the U.S. has been taking their foods out to from Afghanistan. So yeah, that's how Western media, shaping public opinion that and make people believe that Taliban is terrorist instead of freedom fighter. And it's also applied to the case of Iraq war, and also the other Middle East war that have been that have been happening for the last decades. And then what he needs to do more is to framing and spin. So framing refers to how information is presented and what context is provided, which can shape the audience perceptions and interpretations. And then secondly is headlines and leads. So the way headlines and lead paragraphs are crafted can frame the story in particular, like, for example, a headline stating protesters clash with police versus police confront protesters places different emphasis on who initiated the conflict. So if we see the first headline is protesters clash with police, then we will immediately think that the protesters first who initiate the riot during the demonstrations. But if we see the second headline, which is stated that police confront protesters, we will interpret this as a police who started or who initiated the conflict first. That's super simple. And then there is an emphasis and omission. So what is emphasized or left out can also indicate bias. Highlighting certain facts while downplaying or omitting others can lead the audience to draw certain conclusions. For example, focusing on economic benefits while ignoring social drawbacks. The next one is source attribution and credibility. So the choice of sources can how they are attributed can influence the perceived credibility and bias of the report. So if this something from like anonymous or not really a famous or an expert, then it's kind of like making us think that this is not really like credible because they're not from someone who have the expert or kind of like famous or influential to our life. And then there is a selective quotation. So quoting sources selectively or out of context can distort their intended message, including only those voices that support a particular viewpoint while ignoring dissenting opinions can create a biased narrative. For example, there is a lot of social media discourse that currently happening while especially from what I've saw is in the politics in the field of politics. So we are often to see or that in each social media platform, either X or Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, they all have a different, audience who are, tend to believe that they have this kind of they have these political candidates that they think it's better. But on the other social media platforms, there is a something named buzzer that they have the duty to making public and shaping public opinion that they think the political candidate that the other group's choice or choose is inappropriate or not really credible. So yeah, this is kind of like distortions or discourse that we have on the current world, especially in social media that currently or that oftenly happening. And then anonymous sources. So over reliance on anonymous sources can affect credibility, as I've been previously stated. So the use of phrases like experts say or sources close to without clear identifications can make it difficult to assess the reliability of the information. So it's very necessary for us as a person who like producing news to attach the source of information is either the name of the people who quote that or the institutions that make the statement about that. And then so we move on to how does it contribute to bias reporting. So by choosing words with specific connotations, reporters can subtly influence the reader's emotional response and perceptions of the events or individuals involved. And then secondly is the way a story is framed can set the agenda and shape the interpretations of the news, emphasizing certain aspects while omitting others guides the audience towards a particular understanding. And then last but not least is that the selection and presentation of sources can lead legitimacy to a certain viewpoints while delegitimizing others. By selectively coding, the report can be tilted towards a particular narrative. So it is really linguistic features that or like the explanation or deliberation that I have been previously elaborate is really contribute to how news can be biased. So this is really significantly contribute to the bias reporting. And here are some linguistic theories that could help Thompson's to to dig dive into the discourse or the distortions that he is currently fascinated about. So there is a theory of critical discourse analysis. So critical discourse analysis is a theoretical approach that examines the ways in which discourse language use constructs, maintains, and legitimizes power's relations to ideology. And this include intertextuality, modality, and presupposition. The second theory that Thompsons can use is framing theory. So framing theory is originated from Irving Goffman's work, and he suggests that the way information is presented, the frame itself, influences how it is perceived, which includes define problems, diagnose causes, make moral judgment, and suggest remedies. And the third theories that Thompson could apply for his curiosity is pragmatics and speech act theory. So pragmatics focuses on how content influence the interpretations of meaning. This theory is developed by John Sear, which consists of key components, analyzing how utterance perform actions, and the key elements are referred to illocutionary acts and perlocutionary effects. And this next theory that Thompson could apply for is the narrative theory. So this theory examines how stories are constructed and understood. In news reporting, narrative structures can shape perception by first plot, constructions, characterizations, and point of view. And then, last but not least, is the theory of lexical choice and semantic prosody. So, lexical choice refers to the selections of words and their semantic properties, while semantic prosody refers to the positive or negative, or that certain words carry through frequent co-occurrence with other words such as collocational patterns and metaphors. So what we can conclude from these linguistic features and some of the suggestions of how Thompson can explore more on the topics or the distortions that or the discourse that he is currently fascinated about is that by utilizing those theories, it can provide tools to uncover the ideological underpinnings and power structures within the text, helps identify how the presentations of information shapes audience perceptions, focus on the contextual meaning, reveals the structures of the storytelling, and shed light on the subtleties of word use and their cumulative effects on bias. So that's all about the Thompson story. So we are going to another study case that we have on this final project. So it's basically I am assigned to um, how to make or like promote the use of preservations of indigenous language through educations because this study case is basically talking about I'm a working for government as a language planner and I have the duty of how I can still, like preserving the indigenous language while using or utilizing officials language as the, one national language, but still preserving the indigenous language because they have been there for, thousands of years before the officials came in. So here are some of my suggestions about how I can really or actually preserve the indigenous language, and also and integrate to the policy that I could make in the government. So there are basically four strategies to promote indigenous language. The first is building multilingual education program. So of course, like we are, acknowledge that in Indonesia itself, we have hundreds of indigenous language, more than 800 indigenous language from Sabang to Merauke. So we are basically a multilingual people because we have the ability to speak in our own indigenous language. For example, me myself is really fluent in Sundanese as well as Indonesian and also English. So there are three language that I could speak and fluently. So through this program, we need to introduce the language as early as possible while also develop an appropriate curriculum. For example, we know or we acknowledge that early childhood development is like the golden age of how we can really utilize their brain, like the children's brains to really, instilling them with the with and equip them with the appropriate knowledge that could prepare them for the future in the force. So it is really important or necessary to equip them since as early as possible. So like around 5 years old, they could learn their own indigenous language in schools, like through an appropriate curriculum. And also, other than that, it's also necessary to equip teachers and supported by adequate language materials like storybooks, textbook, because sometimes we are just we're tend to focusing uh, um, on the on the things or on the perspective of how students can really equip themselves with the necessary like knowledge, while we are forgetting that teachers as their role model is also needs to to be equipped with the necessary and also a compact knowledge about the material or the subjects that they will be teach to the students. So it's necessary for the teachers to also supported by the government to actually equip them with the necessary knowledge regarding one particular subjects that they would like to um, teach to their students. And then secondly is cultural and language immersions program. So through this program, we will organize language camps and workshops during school break where they can immerse themselves in their indigenous language and involve community elders. So basically, we're kind of like exchanging the knowledge, exchanging the cultures that we have. So for example, I'm a Sudanese, and then there's my friends who native or who have the roots to Japanese. So we can exchange the knowledge and also we can exchange the culture of our both culture, different culture. Of course, it could add to the diversity that we have as a nation or as a country. And also, it's very good for us to strengthening our identity as the people or as the proud members of the our indigenous community. And then thirdly is indigenous campaign. So this is a campaign that will utilize technology advancements like through digital content. So we kind of like creating digital content to promote our indigenous kind of things, culture, languages, and also habits probably. And also there's another kind of things that we can do like through mobile apps, websites, and software. It could be games, it could be like in the in applications that people can access, get can easily access. And also it's necessary to also facilitate the learning of indigenous language for both children and adults. And then we can do community partnerships and run meaningful events to to basically be the melting point where all of the indigenous people in the country could gather and also exchange the knowledge, their values, the culture to each other, and we can learn from those things. And it's very, very beneficial to enrich the diversity that we have as a country. And also the last things, last but not least, this is a very important thing that we need to do before we go through all of these things that I have been previously mentioned. Policy and legislation support. So we need to first officially recognize indigenous languages in the constitutions and allocate funding for the development of educational programs and materials in indigenous language. We sometimes forgot that we have to allocate the state funding, the state budgets to these things, to this kind of particular needs, especially in education. So we have plenty of significant ideas, brilliant ideas, but we are forgetting that we still need to allocate the fundings to really support these programs to to actualize these programs. So here's one of the examples of the success story of these integrations of indigenous language programs into the national curricula. So this story came from Bolivia, one of the Latin America's countries, near to Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Chile, and other Latin American countries. And this stories is actually have been happened in 2009, where this country's constitution recognized 36 indigenous language as officials and as mandated the use of indigenous language in government in education. So the first this is one of like kind of like law bills that they propose to the government, and then in 2010 uh they are they successfully making the bill pass. So it then turned to or conferred to the intercultural and bilingual education law in 2010. So this law is basically requires all students to receive educations in both Spanish and indigenous language. And then secondly is that the government has developed curricula and educational materials in various indigenous languages. So not only Spanish as their official language, but also they provide the material or the education materials into 36 languages that have been officially recognized by the constitutions. And then they do teacher training. So Bolivia has established training programs for teachers in bilingual and intercultural education, which is super necessary for teachers to equip their knowledge and compact their abilities to really to can actually deliver the material well delivered. And then last but not least is the community involvement. This is very important because without community involvement, I think it would be useless, I would say, because um, the role of indigenous communities in the development of and implementation of educational programs is really necessary because the sources is basically from them, and then we need to know like the actual sources, not not kind of like imagining what kind of indigenous culture or indigenous um, values that we can you can input into the curriculum. So it's very necessary, it's really necessary to input or to engage, include the community, indigenous community, to be actually sit with the members of parliament to talking about what kind of curriculums that possible for for people of Bolivia to really actually proud of you know to learn their roots as an indigenous people. So I think that's all from my presentations. Really, really thank you. Big thankful for all of those you who have been watching this video till the end. My name is Daffa Praditya, and thank you so much. Goodbye.